North by Northwest, directed by Alfred Hitchcock, starring Cary Grant and Eva Marie Saint, considered one of the classics of cinema and described often as the first James Bond movie before there ever was an actual James Bond movie. For good reason, because it does share a number of qualities with those later films. The spy genre, a charming monologuing villain, a morally grey lady that falls for the protagonist, and jumping between different locations. The story in the film is this. Cary Grant plays Roger Thornhill, a boring man working in advertising in New York. One day, he gets mistaken for another person, a spy named George Kaplan, and he's basically kidnapped and interrogated. Obviously, he's out of his element. He knows nothing of what's going on and then manages to escape his captors eventually, but ends up on the run from them, on the run from the authorities as he's being framed for murder, and without allies in sight. At least until he meets a charming lady named Eve Kendall, who not only seems eager to help the man, but also seems personally interested in his apparent charms. Now, as I said, the film is considered a classic, and justifiably so. In many ways, it was a pioneering movie in its genre. The concept and the narrative structure are excellent. The dialogue is well written, the performances are good, and the film contains several scenes and sequences that are pretty much iconic by now, with the best example being perhaps the cornfield chase with the crop duster plane. I'm sure everybody would recognize that scene if they saw it. However, I personally have a number of problems with it, much more so than with other Hitchcock movies. First of all, I thought that Cary Grant was completely miscast in the film for the very simple reason that he's way too old. He plays a man that is supposed to be in his 20s, while himself being 55 at the time, visibly 55 by the way, which is insane to me. Now, I know that this was a common practice in Hollywood in those days, with the leading men being well into their 40s or 50s and playing younger guys, often with their female love interests being actually in their 20s. Not to look too far, the same thing happened in Rear Window and Vertigo, both also by Hitchcock. But I think North by Northwest is the most egregious example of the ones I saw, just because of the looks of the actor. The mother of the protagonist is a character also in the film, and she's being played by an actress who was 8 years older than Cary Grant at the time. They really look like husband and wife rather than son and mother, and it really, really took me out of the film. I couldn't fully believe the main character as he was written. Which gets me to the second problem, which is the central romance. There was a 20-year age difference between the two leads, and due to the looks of them both, you could actually convince me that it was 25 or even 30. As such, I think it's tricky to write romance between characters played by such a particular pair of actors in a believable way. And I do think that the movie ends up failing at that. The way it all happens is simply too outrageously naive for me to ever buy into. And I don't even mean the initial meeting and the spark of interest and how quickly it all goes, because that's justified in the story, it's explained. But the way this big romantic love suddenly grows out of basically nowhere was something that I struggled to get on board with. And as a result, pretty much the entire final act, which stems from it, was a bit wonky for me. And finally, I was not a big fan of the ending. I think that with how tense the last 15 or 20 minutes are, the resolution comes too quickly. It's too easy, and it basically uses Deus Ex Machina to finish the film. It is very abrupt, and I would have preferred to give it more room to breathe, to get a proper resolution. Because as it is, it's action, 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 the end. So it feels off to me. This is my take on the film. I appreciate it for its contributions to cinema, but I do recognize its flaws. And in my book, those flaws prevent me from really considering the film as a truly great movie, even taking into consideration that most of its problems are the products of its time.